as Lexi and I were sitting here trying to decide the next reaction video that we should actually do, she mentioned in one of our last videos talking about Spidey and the behavioral arts and the art basically of body language and how to look to see if based on the science, I guess, of body language is just something obviously that police are trained in, investigators are trained in. I think maybe even military psychology, psychologists. A lot of times they get trained in body language, mannerisms, but what Spidey does is he has to get what did he call it? When he reviews people, he has to see their baseline.
He has to see their baseline to see what they normally do.
What they would normally do, which would require him to go into and maybe look at other things before he reviews and analyzes the body language of, say, an interview, which is mostly what it is, interviews, and maybe things that have actually happened. Trials, maybe like stuff with things that have went on live on TV with perhaps Oscars or awards shows, things like that. So Spidey does a baseline to get a generalized idea of this person's mannerisms. And then he goes through, and I don't know how much prep time he does. I'm assuming that it's a great amount of prep time because you can't look at 5 minutes in one thing to decide that's a person's baseline. So you have to go through and you have to look at different types of things in order to consider what that baseline may be. Mm-hmm. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to do a reaction that is sort of short in the body language arts. Behavioral arts. Okay. This is something that she looks into all the time and messes with a lot of the time. But what we're going to do is, this was which one, Lexi? Was this? I'm not sure if this was like the pre-trial.
It's the one from the Sun.
So this was based on what they did before the Sun. Okay, and then after that, then Johnny Depp brought his charges or whatever against Amber Heard, saying that she was pretty much slandering him, which she was doing. I mean, come on. The man was well known. I've been seeing Johnny Depp since I was young. He has... we won't say he doesn't have a little bit of some bad things in his past because, hey, he was coming through it in the 80s, and a lot of rockers, a lot of Hollywood and stuff, especially young and coming up people, did get into some issues, okay? They did have some trouble, okay? So the 80s was a different time. So he was well known for a lot of different things that he did, and then he got hooked up with Amber Heard, and then supposedly by Amber Heard, it was said that Johnny Depp was this horrible person who committed battery for several years against Amber Heard, okay? And these are things nobody had ever heard of. I mean, he had many relationships with high-profile women, and this was the first one who had said, this guy is a domestic violence person. Okay, she tried to ruin him. So it was interesting enough that Spidey did review a lot of things surrounding before, during, and after. So we're gonna try to tantalize you with a little bit of Spidey. This is one of Lexi's favorite people, and on YouTube. And we're going to see what you think about it. Okay, it's really interesting. I don't know if this is a science, people. Okay, this is a science. This is things that people have studied and have found a lot connected to deception and truths. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get into this, and we're going to see what you think about it. Let us know in the comments. Give us, the thumb up. Yeah, this is really interesting. I'd like for you to go on and show us some more things, and we will definitely do that. But since it was mentioned by Lexi, we're going to go ahead and we're going to introduce you guys to Spidey, and we are going to wait and see what you guys say. So we do hope you enjoy it and look and see if you can find the things that he is talking about, maybe in other in where you're around with regular people, out in your day-to-day life, people maybe that are in your friend circle or things like that. I mean, it's really interesting to apply some of this stuff if you know people's baselines. It's really, really interesting to apply that to real life and how we are connected with other people and how people's responses.
Well, the thing is, I can't remember. It was another body analyst that said that 73%, or I think it's 93% of our communication. No, I think it's 80% is something of our communication is through our body and our mannerisms, and not actually what we say.
Exactly. So, and you don't realize a lot of times that your body is speaking a language all in its own. So
and that's what I've been mentioning body language recently, and I want you to see what I'm talking about if you haven't really gotten into it.
So, and Spidey, like I say, is one of her favorites. There's another one that I like to watch. I don't remember his name, but when she was searching up Spidey, I did see his face. But Spidey is actually one of her favorites. So, we tried to choose a shorter video. Obviously, I'll have to cut it up a little bit because we do not want to take from Spidey because he does have a YouTube channel, but he is really, really full of information, and it's good information. So just watch, see what you think, let us know what you think, and maybe we can do some more of these. But right now we're going to listen to Spidey reacting to Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial and who is lying.
Yeah, and we didn't get to do this. So I wanted to do this since we didn't really get to finish what we were wanting to do for the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial.
It was so lengthy that it was going to really become arduous because that trial went on for a while. So we're just going to try this one for you guys because he's got a lot of stuff out there.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Behavioral Arts, and this week begins one of the biggest trials in Hollywood history between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
Everyone in the world knew about it.
Really great body language lessons and a lot of great tells as to who's telling the truth, who's embellishing, who's holding back, and we're going to look at all of that.
And he'll explain
So Johnny Depp and Amber
what he's
Heard
talking
got
about.
married
He'll
in
explain the psychology
2015,
behind it.
and a year later, this whole mess started where she filed for divorce, sued him for domestic violence. He sued her back for domestic violence, defamation. They've been going at each other since then. It's been years. I'm not going to go into all the details of the history of this. I will leave some links in the description if you guys want to know the background. But in this video, I'm going to focus on the behavior, what we're seeing when they talk about the situation. Let's begin with Amber Heard's deposition, where she's answering a bunch of questions
That's what
about
I was trying to think
what
of.
transpired
Depositions
throughout the years.
was the
And there's
deposition.
a lot of great stuff here. Check it out.
Anytime prior to...
And let me just say, okay, just for the record, when you watch her, she gives a lot away just by her reaction to questions and stuff. And it's really interesting to hear him break it down. And if he doesn't say some of the things that has been previously said in other videos of his, because he did go into several different things with analyzing just these two. Very, very fascinating, really.
And if she's your negative vibe while you watch her, you're not alone.
2016, did you ever commit an act of domestic violence against Johnny Depp?
Calls for legal conclusion and irrelevant.
And of course, you will hear in the background, you will hear their attorneys during the deposition allowing them to answer or not answer as well. So,
Go ahead.
Do you understand what I'm asking you?
No.
No?
Now that is a subtle sign. She nods yes, but she says no.
exactly.
So,
And I'm sure Spidey's going to point this out.
Spidey's going to point that out. But this is what I'm talking about. The subtleties of body language, even if it's not massive, is still there.
Exactly.
And it's very noticeable.
And you might look, and when you watch this, you may actually think back to an interaction with someone and you might be like, oh my God, they did that. I did see that. Not with her, but with a person. It's very, very subtle sometimes, but listen to the breakdown on it. It's fascinating, seriously.
Yes, I understand what you're asking.
And prior to May 21,
Look, the attitude.
2016, or May 22, 2016, is it your testimony that you never committed any act of what would be considered domestic violence against Mr. Depp?
Calls for legal conclusion and irrelevant to these proceedings.
It was relevant.
I did my best to defend myself and not
I don't know anybody think that's
seriously
true.
hurt or be a doormat to whom this happens to all the time.
And I just want to say, okay, for the record as well, during this deposition, she's actually from Hollywood, correct? So what most people from Hollywood do, 99.999% of the time is they want to look their part, okay? When they're going to something that would be where cameras and things are, they would want to look presentable and very in place. But it was really, really funny that during this deposition, she tried to really look more homely, and she really tried to look like the battered ex-spouse is what she was really trying to portray, because this is a legal proceeding. You think she probably would have fixed up a little bit, but she was very minimally attired to make her look as though she was the innocent party in this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with this plain hairdo.
And that is a common thing with court systems.
It is. They always try to throw another look in there, even with people who are guilty of terrible, terrible crimes. You'll see when they actually come into court, they will be dressed like they're businessmen, okay, or businesswomen, or whatever. So she is very modestly dressed. This hairdo would not be anything she would do. She does not have on a lot of makeup, and notice that her blouse is buttoned all the way up to the top, which if you ever see pictures or have seen pictures of her that were actually out when she's just in her doing her everyday thing, she might not would have a lot of makeup on, but the hair would be up or fixed, or not looking like this school marm. And definitely she wouldn't be walking around with a blouse on that's buttoned all the way up to her neck.
She has revealing clothes usually.
Yeah, she's usually pretty loose with the attire that she wears, but obviously she wanted to play a part in this deposition, so we'll move forward.
So we see throughout this whole deposition, including right here, a lot of activity with the lips. Mm-hmm. We see the tongue moving like this. We see lip compressions where the lips come together like this. And typically these are all things that contribute to a cluster of deceptive behavior. Always remember, one thing can never indicate that someone's lying.
No, usually you have to have
see
more than
multiple
two
things
to
happening
be
at the same time.
Considered
and
deceptive.
these kinds of things usually contribute to that. But as we go on here, you're going to notice she's eating throughout this deposition. And you'll get my thoughts on that later. But that can explain a lot of this activity because there's food in her mouth. So I'm going to not give too much weight to all that activity in the lips. Now, the eyes, however, totally different story. Mm-hmm. When Amber Heard is being interviewed, and I don't just mean in this deposition, I mean even on other interviews, she has this thing that she does that when the other person is talking, her eyes just shift like this. They go from side to side like this, and it's very strange. I'm sure that some of you noticed looking at it going, what is she doing with her eyes? And there's a couple of reasons that somebody might have shifty eyes like this, and let's cover them all, and I'll tell you which one I think is most likely. The first reason you might see somebody's eyes shifting like this is someone who's very nervous and anxious, especially in social situations.
Yeah.
But that typically is combined with other signs of nervousness. Fidgeting with the fingers like this, picking at their fingers, nail biting, a lot of rubbing the legs, rubbing the arms. This is someone who's uncomfortable. We're not seeing that much fidgeting with her, so I think it's unlikely that that's why her eyes do this. The second reason you might see shifty eyes like this is when in a crowd, someone is scanning all the different people in front of them to see if their story or what they're presenting is connecting. Whether it's deceptive or truthful, this is someone who's gauging the audience reaction. And we will see moments of that throughout the deposition. But
and I think it's a good thing that we can't see everybody out there, because me and her would probably be shifting our eyes every which way to say, are you paying attention? Are you listening? Is it boring you? Are you really getting into this? Does this connect with you in some kind of a way? So just tossing that out there.
In what we just saw, she's not looking at specific people, she's just staring off into the random distance. So that's not what it is either. The third reason you might see shifty eyes is accessing memory. So it's very likely that in this case, her lawyers gave her very strict instructions on how to handle certain questions and what to say, and don't say this and do say that. So it's very likely that she's looking at, what was I supposed to say here? She's thinking about it, and we often do this when we're thinking about or trying to access a specific memory. It's like we're searching the file cabinet. I do think that's part of what's happening, but I think the most likely reason as to why she does this thing with her eyes is reason number 4. The fourth reason is one that I'm very familiar with, and it's not because I studied criminal interrogation, it's not because of my degree in social psychology, it's because of the third part of my experience as an entertainer, as a mentalist who entertains people. Before I was on stages and TV shows, I used to do a lot of close-up, intimate cocktail parties or high-end events. Notice how very often, as her eyes shoot across, her mouth opens at the same time and it looks like this. I've seen this very often in high society people with a snobby or elitist attitude. Now, I'm not saying she's trying to be condescending or dismissive. I just think that given who she is and the elite status that she has, she's developed this sort of attitude of like, you can't hold my attention. And you'll notice throughout this entire deposition, she very rarely gives the interrogator that attention and respect, and she's often just sort of looking around like, are we done here? Can I go yet? So that's what I think these shifty eyes are. He is the godfather of microexpressions and the author of many books, including Telling Lies, which is an incredible book all about the science of deception and what happens in the brain. And in this book, he talks about some research that he's done that shows us that when someone is telling the truth, but they fear that they're not being believed, they are going to show a lot of signs of deception. So throughout this entire analysis, please keep that in mind. I might see signs of deception, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're lying, because it makes sense that in both cases, both Johnny Depp and Amber Heard have that fear of not being believed because they have another person with a great big social following who's calling them a lie. I'm going to be very careful to never say, this is a lie, this is the truth. I'm going to point out the behaviors that indicate what it might be, but I'm going to try to reserve judgment because I don't want to be the person who doesn't take this seriously. Some people do have gut feelings. That being said, let's look at that answer right at the end, where we're seeing some verbal stuff and some nonverbal stuff. The nonverbal is that arm shooting across like this, almost to where she rips the mic off her shirt, and it goes up here, and we're seeing blocking, and we're seeing this tense scratching. This is not the way we typically get an itch. Usually if you have an itch on your shoulder, it's a slow movement as your attention stays where it's supposed to be, and then it just sort of lowers naturally like this. It's rarely this shot like this, which is tense sort of like this, and it comes back. So around this question that she's being asked, have you ever physically attacked Johnny Depp? There is some defensiveness going on. We're seeing the arm come up and block what we call the ventral side, the front, which is very vulnerable.
The vulnerable organs.
There's tension here. So does this mean it's deceptive?
Yeah, and I think you really notice what a lot of times when people are in uncomfortable situations, they either like block like this, they block like this, or they block their reproductive organs because those are sensitive, but it's almost like the body's way of putting up a defensive wall. A lot of people do it all the time.
From the question, or does it corroborate what she's about to say, which is that she did physically harm him, but it was in self-defense, and this is that defense coming up? Either one is possible. Let me know in the comments what you think. But let's listen at the words that she's using. It's entirely focused on defense, which obviously in a criminal case like this is a good defense. Her lawyers would have probably advised her to stick to that story, that anything she did was in self-defense. But we even see the way she says, well, there's a lot of hesitation as it's coming out. She's not getting deeply emotional as she's recalling this. It's not affecting her emotionally. It's very sort of surface level emotions.
And most likely victims of domestic violence would actually show emotion
this happens all the time. So she's telegraphing here that it's important to her to stop the behavior from being a recurring thing. This is a very prideful comment. I didn't want to be a person to who this happens. That's not me. So we're getting a lot of defensiveness around this. That doesn't indicate truth or deception, just priorities.
Isn't it true that you had previously told Johnny Depp that you had hit him?
I'm going to object. It's a different question. It's vague
She
and
likes
ambiguous,
that.
Vegas to time.
yeah.
Because she started nodding yes.
Many times when we fought, well, not many times, he hit me for a very long time before I ever...
No emotion in her face.
Is non-responsive and moved to strike.
Once again, a lot going on here. And one of the things that really stood out to me was her reaction to her lawyer's objection. If you go back to the first clip that I showed you guys, when her lawyer objected, she barely budged.
What would be considered domestic violence against Mr. Depp?
Calls for legal conclusion and irrelevant to these proceedings.
But in the second one, she turns her entire head like this, very enthusiastically, and she's happy about this objection. It's like, listen up, everyone, this is important. Then she comes back down here as he's talking, and she's sort
like
of
she's using it as a distraction.
internalizing. When we go downwards like this with our eyes, with our energy, it's inner monologue. She's really trying to talk to herself and figure out,
This is
okay, what am
actually
I going to
common
say
behavior
here?
for actors
Then she
and
goes back to
actresses.
him like, okay, I'm not done coming
They
up
have
with
to
an
internalize
answer.
their character.
This objection is really important. She's happy about this objection because she's not quite sure how to handle this question. And there's a lot more things corroborating that. One of them is the fact that with her body, she's doing something called turtling. Now, she was doing this earlier, but it's getting worse now. Turtling is when we become smaller.
You
Just like a
shrink.
turtle withdraws into its shell, we become smaller because we want to draw less attention to ourselves. We take up less space. We do this when we're stressed and when we're insecure. So we're seeing a lot of insecurity, a lot of uncertainty, and when the answer finally does come out, it's a mess. We're getting a lot of what we call speech disfluency, which is stumbling on your words, a lot of verbal leaks, which is hesitation, a lot
Which
of
is
what I
actually
call
more
fluff.
of like sentence breaks, which you say like
Fillers, too.
Fillers is fillers.
Yeah.
Which is talking a lot without saying anything, and most importantly, non-answer statement. She
Yep.
doesn't answer the
She
question
kept beating
that's
around the
being
bush
asked.
instead of answering
Right.
the
She's
question.
not asked what the violent history is, how many times he hit her, how many times she hit him. She's being asked if she recalls saying or agreeing that she hit Johnny Depp.
Exactly.
And she doesn't answer that, which
Says it
is
was a
why the
counter-defense.
lawyer was asking
Right.
the question, says, I'm going to strike that because she didn't answer it. I think that she has prepared answers in her head for specific questions, and this is an actress forgetting her lines. Because we see that sort of, oh good, my lawyer's saying something.
And then she starts
I have time to
internalizing.
think about the answer
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
It's
Wait, what was
common
I
for
supposed to
actors
say?
and
then
actresses.
she
I've seen
starts a
plenty of them,
script and she
especially
goes,
when
"No, wait,
if
no."
you've actually been to plays where people actually perform in front of you on a stage live. They tend to do that before they come out from behind the curtains, because I can see sometimes like from the side, you'll see an opening to the back area, and some of them will internalize before they come out. It's quite common.
Not that. She literally says, well, not many times, like, strike that. That's not the right answer. And this, it looks exactly like an actress on set when they forget their lines and they're like, no, sorry. And then they're trying to figure out
Yeah,
what the script is
the rapid
for
eye
this
blink, it's like she's
question.
trying to get her thoughts together when you rapidly blink your eyes.
And at the end, she looks right back at her lawyer because she realizes she messed up, and this time she's looking at him for help. At the end of that statement, she goes right back to him like, that didn't go
But her
well.
face looked
Okay, now
pleading.
it's about to get really emotional. We're gonna dive into some parts where she's clearly emotional about what she's saying, but what does it indicate about what she's actually feeling?
I meant to hit you, and I
The
did not
smirk
do this thing
is very telling.
No, God, no, I okay, I'm
On her
sorry.
eyes, smirk,
So on the tape, you tell Johnny Depp that you did mean to hit
lip
him.
compression.
Objection, that's argumentative, and it
Smirk.
misstates what the recording was.
And it also misrepresents
Yeah, shut up.
what actually happened, which is him trying to get into a room I'm trying to keep him out of. And then he runs the door over my toes.
Which we actually found out during the trial was the complete opposite. He was in a room. He was trying to keep the door closed. It did go over her toes or something.
It did go over her toes. And then he went to see if she was okay.
Then he actually opened the door,
she hit him.
and then she like hit the door and like knocked him down. So it was so interesting.
Well, another video, Spidey does that part.
Yes, exactly.
So we don't want to get into that.
Right, but just for saying it, and just her facial expressions during this, she's just
constant smirking,
rolling her eyes
Now,
and stuff.
the thing is she is being accused of violence in this clip that they were letting her listen to, and she was being a biatch.
Yeah,
so
I mean, yeah.
her smirking at this just pretty much is pretty telling.
I think it is, and the eye roll.
The eye roll, and him saying basically, "You are hurting me."
Exactly.
Yeah, no. That is not the behavior of a victim.
No, it really
That
isn't.
never
She
is.
never once acted like a victim, even during the trial, and we followed the trial.
No, and because it's honestly so cringeworthy. It's almost like a soap opera when you watch the trials all through when it came to her being on the stand. Now, Johnny, honestly, he had so much emotion throughout the whole thing. I hated listening to him because it made me want to cry for him.
He had genuine emotion.
He had genuine emotion because if you are an empath, you can feel that. But when she got on stage, it was like a soap opera. I mean, I'm telling you, her and her lawyers, they were clowns this whole time.
I'm sure she rehearsed a lot of it because she thought that her acting skills was really,
superb.
really going to win this case for her. And if you haven't got, there's places you can go to on YouTube that you can review the trial. It was laughable when she made it to the stand. It was seriously laughable.
I would say if you want to look for those areas, I would say look up on YouTube most memorable moments from this case, and you'll probably see that because her and her attorneys were just clowns.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But even one of her attorneys, like objected to his own question.
Objected to himself because he's so used to cutting off every single question.
Is really look into it if you hadn't done it already. I know this is old news, but
her and her lawyers are terrible. I mean, honestly,
they really were. They really were.
Trying to get into the room, I tried to push him out of it, which is what the hit is referred to. And Johnny, whenever he was injured or touched, it always referred to it in these ways of punching or clocked or whatever. And whether you discussed it with him or not, the last thing you do in talking to him afterwards or trying to reconcile
She's not even looking at
is to get into what the definition of those words mean to him.
Just say what
So
happened.
I never even addressed it. He would, if he was ever pushed,
She's constantly smirking.
It was a cold, he called it a cold clock. I mean, it was just very dramatic.
She's eating, first of all. And it's very rare that we eat when we're highly stressed.
Exactly.
Notice how when you're stressed or highly anxious, you don't really have much of an appetite, but she's sitting there, looks pretty comfortable. She's eating as she's listening to this recording.
Her shoulders are slouched, it makes comfort.
We see that smirk with this rolling eyes, like, oh, this old thing. Remember, I've said this in previous videos, when we roll our eyes, it's a familiar irritation. It's like, oh, here we go again. So she's got this eye rolling with the smirk. And to me, the big thing that I'm thinking in that beginning is, this is not someone who's in a state of fear.
Exactly.
Now, this could be simply that she's a confident woman, so she doesn't let the stress or the fear affect her, and she's trying to stay composed.
Even if that was the case, a true victim of domestic violence would show even just a hint of fear or even just grief from
Emotion.
the whole thing. You would still see it. She has none.
Yes,
she's smirking and is actually amused by this clip she listened to, but yet this is a serious topic.
Exactly.
So if she's a victim, why is she amused by it?
Exactly.
Very possible, but this is just inconsistent with what you would expect to see from someone talking about this kind of thing. You would expect to see more sort of fear, especially when she's listening to that recording, revisiting this traumatic thing. She's smirking, eyes are rolling. She talks about hit, and she does finger quotes.
Yeah, finger quotes is not a good sign.
That's the hit that was being referred to. That doesn't require finger quotes. You did say the word hit.
I meant to hit you.
So this eye rolling, this smirking, this
Mm-hmm.
hit, she's trying to minimize that confession that they have recorded. When she talks about Johnny Depp, we're seeing familiar irritation. You know the way you talk about someone you know for a very long time, oh, this is just the way they are, and she's got that smirking. She's scanning the room, and this time it's not those random look-arounds like this. It's she's looking at specific people,
making sure
she's
they're
like,
getting
this is how Johnny is. You have to understand this is how he is, because she knows he's got a lot of people on his side, and so she's sending this message to as many people as she can.
Yes or no, did you ever punch Johnny Depp with a closed fist in the history of your relationship with Johnny?
Answer it however you feel you wish to.
See, she loves that distraction.
One time, Johnny was hitting me, and he was hitting me hard and repeatedly, and I was screaming. Security walks in, and they don't do anything about it. And he makes this motion when Jerry Judge yells boss, or Sean, I can't remember who it was.
She is once again looking at the people in the room, really focused on making sure she's selling the story right. Her illustrator this time is off. When she says he made this gesture, and then she's using this gesture to really sell this story to the people. Then she gets surprisingly over-specific about, when Jerry yells, I don't know if she says boss or whatever she says, or maybe it was Sean, I don't know. That's not important to this story. Typically, we pay a lot of attention to where the specifics are coming in. When someone is giving you a truthful story, they give you a lot of specifics about the important event, not the things surrounding it.
Not things surrounding it.
People who are being deceptive will
The
try to
ones
give you a
that,
lot
when they
of
give you things about surroundings, they're trying to sound truthful, but that's not actually the case.
details about the things surrounding it to come off as more honest. So I think that whatever's happening here is at the very least her giving this big exaggerated thing to defend herself. I always say truth tellers tell, liars sell. And there's a lot of selling going on here. But remember what I said earlier, people who are telling the truth but are scared of not being believed will often do these things as well.
The thing is, it's not really that, because if somebody was afraid of being believed but is telling the truth, they would give more detail than the person who randomly just walked in while you're being beaten. I mean, that makes no sense. Right. How would you even know who that person was?
And she's trying to act like, as the victim, nobody was helping her because they were all, there for
They're all in on it.
Yeah.
But the thing is if she was telling the truth, she would give more details about everything else, not the surrounding person who just happened to walk in at the time.
Right.
I can't tell you that she's lying, but it's very important for her to present this version of the narrative.
He was about to push my sister down the stairs. She was attempting to break us up. I am protective over my baby sister. When he laid hands on her, I don't know what I did, but I know I jumped in between the actions that I saw could lead to a fatal injury to my sister. She was standing on the top of a flight of the stairs, and she has never hurt anyone in her life, and she does not deserve to be pushed down the flight of stairs. And it looked like she was about to be. And I would have done what anybody who has a child or a sister would have done.
We're seeing some of what...
Okay, now if you actually paint this picture in your mind like I am, I visualize things in my mind. So you are just fighting with him, and she's come between you. You guys are nowhere near the stairs. How in the world is suddenly Johnny Depp about to push her down the stairs when you're not even near it?
Yeah, and she said her sister was at the top of the stairs.
Yeah.
He was about to push her sister down the stairs, and she jumps in the middle. But you're saying that you and Johnny Depp are in the middle of this argument, this physical fight or whatever. And suddenly you're getting in between him and your sister, because obviously he had to scale the stairs to get to your sister to push her down, which really, if you do like Lexi says and you put it in your mind and you're trying to get this scene, it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't.
It's almost like it's two different stories. Because the thing is they're not near the stairs. Her sister is near the stairs. Now she's in a brawl with Johnny Depp. But suddenly she's almost acting like it was Johnny Depp and her sister that was in the brawl. So the picture makes no sense, because how is he distracted long enough to walk that whole way and try to push her downstairs when he was originally fighting with you?
Exactly. I mean, it didn't make any sense, but she's trying to emphasize like he's saying, she's selling this story, she's giving this eye contact. I would have done anything for these innocent people.
But
my sister.
She has no emotion at all.
Exactly.
What we're supposed to see, and we're not seeing some of what we're supposed to see. So there's a protectiveness here and a narrative where she's trying to get people to sympathize with her situation by making this about protecting her baby sister. That's two words, baby and sister. She is trying to evoke in people their sibling instincts and their maternal instincts by saying, my baby sister. So I would have done...
Anybody who's a child, see, she's trying to get people to empathize with her.
Exactly.
By creating this picture. But her expressions and her lack of emotions is not doing that for her.
And then even though what he's saying there, she even says anybody who has a child for a sister would have done. That's weird. This wasn't her child. And her baby sister is a grown woman. Okay? So...
And as she's looking around the room, she's going, all of us would have done this. You must sympathize with me because you would have all done this. And we're seeing her spit these words. And on one or two occasions, we're seeing her voice crack as she comes back and those lips sort of do that thing. We're also seeing her, she's forward, she's lunging. This is the most forward she's been. She's almost like going over the table. So there's a lot of this that I believe she is actually feeling real rage towards this. But here's the thing. You can ask me right now, hypothetically, what I would do if someone tried to harm someone I care about, my sister, my girlfriend, and you will see this kind of rage in me. As I channel that and I go, oh, I would destroy them. You have no idea. What any one of you would do, I would do the same thing. This, especially for an actress, is one of the easiest things
to
imagine
evoke those emotions. It's really easy to look mad, but sometimes you can tell if it's fabricated just by the simple wrinkles in the forehead or the brow. You can tell if it's
channeling
real.
all these emotions. So it's near impossible to know if this is something that she actually experienced in that moment. I'm not seeing enough recall to that moment to guarantee that. she's re-experiencing it?
Really, I don't think so, because the fact that I knew before this trial she was very abusive to her sister. So I don't think that would be the case.
Versus, is this just something she's channeling by imagining her sister being in trouble and really bringing out those emotions? Let me know in the comments, what is your intuition telling you? Are we seeing a real recall of a real stress here, or someone just channeling the capacity to feel that stress? Little side note also about this, we are seeing a lot of eye flutters throughout that. And eye flutter is when we're having a hard time processing information. It also happens in pre-aggression. Like when we're about to get aggressive, we kind of eye flutter, you didn't. Oh.
I did that in the last video when I was talking about the bullying going on. If you actually look at the BTS episode before this, I actually did that a few times because I was getting so frustrated. I was getting so frustrated. I actually felt myself doing it.
And again, it's because, you did not just say what I thought you did. So we're processing this sort of thought that's getting us aggressive. Again, that could contribute to either side. Either she's struggling to process what happened, or she's struggling to process how she's going to say this. You could see eye flutters in both of those scenarios.
Are you finished? I want to make sure.
Eye flutter.
Finished or not? Yeah. Okay. Did the bottle you refer to, did it ever touch your body?
No.
Did the wine glass you refer to, in reference to the bottle, ever touch your body?
Pieces of it did. It shattered.
Okay. Where did the pieces you say touched your body touch your body? What part of your body?
I don't remember exactly what part of my body was touched by.
Okay. If glass shatters, it easily shreds skin.
It can.
I think you know where it would have touched you if it did scrape.
And two, I think she had even mentioned that she had walked across broken glass. However, there were no pictures of her cut feet.
And no records of her actually going to get medical help for those injuries.
Yeah, and that was what was really crazy, is because she never did try to receive any kind of medical help, even from those people that were really sort of there. Because people who are famous, they're going to have easy access to doctors. Yeah. Easy, because they have their own doctors. Okay, he did, she did. She never sought out any type of treatment for these injuries.
No, but the thing is when you have glass shatter around you and it cuts you, you know exactly where it's touched you.
Oh, yes.
So, and really, if I'm thinking about this correctly, if it shatters kind of behind you, well, there's your face, there's your neck, there's your shoulder, there's your arms, there's your back. If it shatters on the floor, there's your feet, there's your ankles, legs. It's a simple question.
Right.
It is a simple question.
It's amazing what she chooses to remember and what she doesn't.
Exactly. She remembers all these specifics, but for this answer, for her coming here for domestic violence, she don't remember.
She doesn't remember, which is really good for her, since she doesn't remember it, because she, I think, can play it out in her mind as how the glass would even hit her. That's why she doesn't remember, because that's not the way it happened.
The glass breaking upon impact. I do know that it touched my body, knees and hands.
Okay, so you literally just said you don't know, but now you're saying it was your knees and hands. But were you crouched on the floor for that to happen? I mean,
yeah. And if glass were to shatter, how would it get your hands and your knees and nothing else?
Exactly. See, it makes no sense. It's either up here or down here. Unless you're crouched to the floor, or you're
crawling on the floor,
or you're crawling on the floor, or you slip and fall on the floor.
Right.
She didn't really mention that ever, so really her evidence of where it touched me didn't make sense. Also, no medical records.
Right. Her memory of
my hands, my knees, anyway. When I went down to the floor, some version of my legs. When I went down to the floor later,
some version of my legs. see, she is like, no, I don't know. Well, no, I do know. No, I don't know.
Nothing significant. Not like Australia or anything.
Okay. I said I was going to stay impartial on this, and I will on the
honestly, Spidey, this whole time, if this video does good, we're probably going to do the rest of these from the trial. It's so hard to stay neutral when you know for a fact that this is full of BS.
I mean, it really, really was. And the reason we say that is because we listened to the entire trial. While I was working, we were listening to it live. We were listening to an attorney who was very impartial, break down things that should be happening in the courtroom and talking about things that are happening
and legal stance.
And the legal stance. We were listening to an expert in the legalities and the courtroom and how things work in the courtroom.
If you've heard of Emily Baker, she's amazing. Go listen to her. She does all of the
more high profile
cases,
yeah.
and she does a great job explaining the legal terms of it.
Of the case as to who's being deceptive, who's being honest. That's deception. Sorry, that's just straight up deception. Let's look at why I say that. I'm not even going to go into the details of the body language, but there's so many clues even on the surface. First of all, think of any injury you've ever had. Anything you've ever injured yourself.
That's even just verbal.
Our deepest instinct is to survive. So when we have an injury, we remember exactly where we took that damage. It is close to impossible that you can live a scenario where something shatters, you remember getting hit, but you don't remember where you got hit.
Exactly. And see, that's what's so crazy is the only time that I think anyone would ever forget something like that is if they were actually knocked unconscious, like a car accident, if they may be assaulted to the point of unconsciousness.
Or that if it's happening so much at one time, you don't remember certain places where you were hit.
Parts of it. But yeah, you would know where you were being hit.
At least the major parts.
Right. And obviously there would be pictures of it as well.
Yeah, and then there'd be medical records of it getting treated.
Exactly. So yeah, he's on point when he says, yeah, I don't buy this because she doesn't remember this really, really traumatic time, this traumatic incident. She doesn't remember it.
Does that make sense? If you remember that you got hit, you must remember where it was.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you can't remember being hit. Then she says, my hands and my knees, well, actually not my hands. How is it possible to misremember that? If you cut your hands, you would definitely remember that. So I think what this is it's her trying to sell or dramatize this, then suddenly remembering that there's probably evidence that her hands were never cut, so immediately withdrawing that. Then some version of my legs, I can't even.
Yeah.
But another thing that we're seeing here is her trying to shift the focus to what is important for her narrative. So as she's telling the story, she reiterates and very articulately the glass breaking upon impact.
I don't remember exactly what part of my body was touched by the glass breaking upon impact.
She really wants people to understand that he violently threw this bottle at this glass because she knows that she may not have gotten that injured, but still, the glass shattered. It broke upon impact. And then at the end, we get this little jab where she goes, it was nothing that bad, nothing like Australia, because Australia was really, really bad. So she's shifting the focus to what does make him seem violent and bad, as opposed to talking about this incident.
See, and it really puts into perspective what she claims to be more evidence against him, because this time right here is not a lot of evidence against him. And so she points to another.
Wasn't really that bad in terms of the injuries that she sustained. I also know you guys are going to have a ball in the comments about that expression she had right in the beginning when the lawyer asked, are you done? I just want to make sure that you're done. A picture is worth 1,000 words. That little clip is worth 1,000,000 words. I can't wait to see what you guys think of that expression in the comments.
I could say a lot.
Now let's move on to Captain Jack Sparrow himself, Johnny Depp, and some really interesting stuff from his deposition. Much less, but very significant.
She threw a vodka bottle at me.
Now, let's just go ahead and point out the fact that deposition, okay? Johnny Depp is at his deposition. How does he look? He's dressed up. His hair is fixed. He has a tie on. He has his jacket. There's very, very different. He's just trying to look businesslike, presentable, and match the where he's going to. Because if you're going to go to court for something and you're definitely going to be trying to defend yourself,
you don't want to look trash.
You're not going to want to go in there looking like an abuser or a trashy person. And he didn't try to go. He has basically saying he was a victim. Did he go in looking like a victim? No, he tried to go in
looking like himself.
Very professional, very businesslike to do what he needed to do. So there's two stark differences with that. But let's listen to how he answered his questions and listen to what Spidey says.
And my hand was resting on the marble of the bar like that. And the first bottle went just past my ear, and the second one was a larger bottle, and she threw it from about this distance, and it smashed into the bar, which and
Middle finger.
this-
Middle finger.
this finger, who I now call Little Richard.
Now, I can easily explain that one, and there's several people that I have in mind that do the same thing. When they talk about something that's very discomforting, painful, or something that they wish to not really mention, they try to lighten the mood by making a slight joke out of it or just giggling about it.
Just a little giggle, yeah.
So he's trying to dramatize it and make it sound funny, so it kind of brings him away from the tension of talking about it.
Or the pain of talking about it.
The pain of talking about it. Because you think about it, he was a victim.
He actually was the victim.
So if you try to say, well, he's laughing about it because he's guilty, no, it's just, the thing is that's what introverts do when they talk about something very uncomfortable. They try to giggle past it, or at least try to lighten the mood, because they feel tense about the whole thing.
Right.
And I'm sure you've seen, it's more of a man thing, because they are usually not very open about their feelings, so they don't want to get emotional, so they try to just laugh it off and then brush it off.
Right, and I think it also goes back to a little bit of a defense mechanism.
It's a defense mechanism, especially for introverts. It's very defensive.
And he is very introverted. He really is.
He's very introverted. He's very private about his life.
He really is.
Was the tip of the finger was severed, and the
See, in a lot of the mumbling, well, he's using a lot of fillers. No, it's just he. If you actually look at all of his interviews, he tries to find the right words to
He
say.
thinks about what he's going to say. He really does.
all the bone in here was completely shattered. I mean, it looked like Vesuvius. And then I got infections. I ended up with MRSA twice, so it's very complicated. I was trying to just get the finger back, you know.
Yeah,
Because he plays guitar.
They had to find the finger and had
Yes.
to do all this work to get back on.
I had my finger chopped off by this woman that I was
See?
married to.
Let's talk about the concept of hesitation, because hesitation can both be an indicator of truth and an indicator of deception, depending on the circumstance and when in the answer it presents itself. So, hesitation is not normal if you're asking me a direct question to which I should know the answer. If you ask me where I live, what I do for a living, what my
wouldn't hesitate
mother's
for it.
name is,
Right.
you know, obviously it takes a second to register the question, but there should be a direct answer to a question like that. Yes or no questions. When it comes to telling a story, especially an emotional one, hesitation is very normal. Because you're thinking, you're trying to remember, especially when we have this
Especially when you
downwards
repress it.
energy, because we're trying to recall. So a bit of hesitation here and there is perfectly normal. Also, when hesitation comes in the middle of the story, it's very normal. You're trying to remember bits and pieces, and then this happened.
Because that had been
and then,
years ago.
And then I think
Since
this happened.
before that.
So you're trying to recall it. Hesitation before, like this big pause before an answer, that is an indicator of deception, because you're planning and rehearsing and strategizing your story and checking in with former lies you told to see if what you're about to say makes sense. So here we're seeing Johnny.
And I'm just going to say on that point, when he says you got to check back to your former lies, as I was a young child, and I've always sort of kind of told her as well, because I think the one thing that I've always really despised in life is I hate someone who lies. I just won't say hate. I don't like liars, okay? And the thing with liars is when you tell a lie, you have to remember that lie in order to move forward in case somebody asks you about the specific thing that caused you to tell said lie. And one lie can actually end up being more lies to cover up the lie from before. So if you just tell the truth in the beginning, you don't have to work hard to remember it, because you're telling the truth instead of having to memorize all the lies that you've previously told.
Depp telling this story, and there's a couple of things that are interesting about this. First of all, we're seeing quite a few smirks and some jokes, and he laughs at his jokes, or he says things, you know, like some metaphors, like it was like Vesuvius, and you know, and he smirks at his jokes. And this is just the habit of a charming storyteller. He is a professional storyteller. He's an actor. And look at the movies that he's in. Very fantasy, very, you know, story-driven. He knows how to present something to charm someone, to connect with someone. we're also, he's giving, the bottle went right past my ear. He's really building a very
And he never
vivid image because
deviated
he knows how to
from
do
that
He's also experiencing
story.
emotion as he talks about this, because we have that sort of hesitation as he's thinking about it and he's recalling it. And remember, again, the eyes are going downwards as he's remembering. His pacing is slow as he's recalling, and every now and then he looks up to get a piece of information as he keeps going. It's choppy, it's messy. It has a very honest feel to it. But this comes with a giant, giant warning. We're looking at one of the most accomplished actors in the world. Now, I covered the whole Will Smith, Chris Rock thing, and I did say numerous times that there are certain things that even a trained actor cannot fake or hide in moments of real emotion. This isn't one of them. Telling the story in an emotional, believable way is something that an actor can do easily. So am I saying that this is entirely truthful? I'm not. I'm just saying it looks entirely truthful.
Amber, you apparently created some story about you punching a wall or something like that?
She says that I did it myself, yeah. By punching a wall.
Just another way to hurt you.
That's it. I'd like to see reactions from scientists. I mean,
because it wasn't possible.
It wasn't possible to put a hole that big in the wall.
Kind of,
and so that was the thing too. Is she had said he had punched a wall. She had said that he cut his finger off himself. I think with the phone slamming a phone.
Slamming a phone in the wall.
Yeah, I mean there was several sort of kind of renditions of how the finger and he actually I believe that when he went to actually get treatment for the finger, he lied in the hospital as to how it happened because he was still trying to protect her.
Yeah, but the thing is there was several people who actually knew what happened, but he covered up what they said. They said that he had a bottle thrown at him, but he stopped them and said he accidentally cut himself with a knife.
Yeah, so he was covering up for her because she is obviously a movie star, and she is his wife, and he didn't want to hurt her, I guess, in the eyes of thank you. That's actually he didn't want her image.
The thing is, and I think the medical person who did work on him said there's no way that you can actually cut your finger and it looked like that because it looked like it was shattered. It looked shredded, like glass had hit it.
Yes, and they actually had to go. I think his bodyguard or one of his people.
Yeah.
Not the bodyguard, maybe somebody that takes care of the house or something. I had to go back and find the tip of his finger.
It was one of the caretakers for the house. I think it was the British butler they hired.
Yes.
And
he went back and found the fingertip where it could be sewn back on and hopefully sewn.
And it was found in the place where he was standing, that in his story, where he was, the finger was still there in that place.
Exactly.
Right next to the bar.
Yep, exactly.
The trauma, the sort of...
Bless you.
Thank you.
I'd love to see her explain how someone hits a wall, and if they put their fist through it, that means that it's drywall.
So this is a really, really interesting answer because there is a giant cluster of deception. Always remember the way we know that there's a high likelihood of deception is we see a lot of deceptive behaviors happening at the same time, and there is certainly a ton here. First, he's smirking at the question. There's that sort of condescending smirk at the question.
But you almost have to think about it. She is in several instances, not even including this one, she made it sound like he was Hulk. Like he had that kind of ability to punch through something or toss her across the room. And I'm like,
which she did say happened.
There is no way. So I would smirk at that too, because how could you even believe somebody could punch a hole in a wall
that would sever your finger?
That would sever, I can't even go into that.
Yeah, I would probably smirk too.
Just a sign of like condescension. But then we have the hand goes to the forehead.
But also in the same note, Spidey is trying to be fair and neutral in his analysis as well. So we're going to put that out there as well.
Face touching, one of the most researched signs of deception. So hand goes to the forehead, then it passes through his hair. It's called grooming. It's where we sort of make ourselves more presentable. So we have that. Then we have an enormous amount of not only face touching, but mouth covering. the hand comes up like this. Now, when we're kids and we say something we're not supposed to say, our hands come up like this and block.
Well, that's the thing that's different, because I've actually seen him do a lot of that in interviews. He does do a lot of this.
He really does. And see, that's the thing. I think maybe as the trial and stuff went on, he realized a lot of that was just Johnny Depp's way.
Yeah, because the thing is he's an introvert. He is not a person who puts a lot of his social life or his life in general out for the public to see. So this was something that was a huge jump for him.
Right.
He was having to put out very personal information.
Very intimate personal information.
He'd never given anybody for publicity to see.
Right. He's lived in France. I mean, he has homes obviously elsewhere, but he lives in France most of the time.
He didn't want to be around the paparazzi.
He does not. You know, he's raising his children with his partner, and he stayed out of the spotlight.
Yeah, because he didn't want that kind of spotlight for his kids.
No, so this was very hard for him.
So the thing is he feels like the defense. He doesn't want to speak this, but he has to in order to get the verdict out there that I am a domestic violence survivor, and I need you to understand me, that she's lying about me. Because the thing is that's probably what that condescending smirk was. How could she say I'm like Hulk? I mean,
right, exactly.
It's just silly.
As we become teenagers, we become a little bit better at it as we do this kind of thing, and as adults, we're a lot more subtle.
Based on Johnny Depp often touches his mouth when he's listening, but never to this extent when he's talking. But this is very private stuff and very intimate stuff that he's never really spoken.
And very uncomfortable
so
for him.
He often wants to put up a defensive wall, but he can't, because this is a serious issue that he wants to be taken care of. He's been, what was it called?
Oh,
he was defamed. He was defamed by her.
Exactly.
So he had to get the stuff out, regardless of how comfortable he was.
Exactly.
About it, but we're seeing a lot of mouth covering. Finger comes up like this. Notice also, it's not an open palm touch like this. The fingers are coming in, digital flexion, signs of nervousness, signs of stress. As he comes up here, goes down, comes back up. So there's a lot of face touching. We see two separate eyebrow flashes where the eyebrows go up, and this is when we seek approval. And it's pretty clear that in the way he's presenting this, he's seeking the approval of the people that he's saying this to. Like, it's not possible. It's not possible to do this to your finger by punching a wall. Is this deceptive? Is this, because, I mean, it looks deceptive.
No, not really.
Let me tell you exactly what I think. I believe that he 100% punched a wall. I don't believe that's how he hurt his finger. Could not have done this. You know, I would love to speak to scientists or physicians. Then he says, I'd love to see her explain how I could have broken my finger or damaged my finger by punching this wall. So he is denying breaking or damaging his finger by punching the wall.
But he did admit he punched a wall.
But we're seeing these deceptive tells because I think he 100% did punch a wall. It's just not how he damaged his finger. So
Right. What's what
that was,
he's
guys,
saying.
that was the analysis of the depositions. And I think there was a lot of really interesting stuff there. And at the
See,
end
that's
of
the thing. That's how subtle these things are. You can go ahead and switch it over. But that's how subtle body language is. Sometimes it's very in your face, like Amber Heard's, and then some things are subtle, like Johnny's motions with his hands or his eyes. So see, it's almost like you almost have to go to psychology to understand it, because it is connected to psychology as
It
to
really
why
is.
certain things happen.
And it makes sense when you hear somebody explain it, I guess.
Because you could almost pair to times you've talked to somebody with this topic in mind, and they do these exact same expressions. Then you found out later on that maybe they were deceiving you. And it's like, man, I should have known, because they did that when they said that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the interesting thing, too, is a lot of times these people who do, they arrest somebody and they've got to do interviews and stuff with them. They have to ask them questions. They pay a lot of attention to the mannerisms. So it's a good thing there is sort of kind of a science behind it. And I can't imagine how many years it took to come up with all of the analysis and figurings, but it had to have taken a while.
Well, it's still continuing.
Yeah, and we hadn't even mentioned too, but we did move our room around. I don't know if you can tell, but I was tired of y'all seeing the bed in a shambles. So all our pillows and stuff usually stay at the end of the bed with extra blankies. So that's why you're seeing that in the back as well. So, because usually the bottom of the bed don't get messed up. So anyway, but let us know what you really think. There's a lot of Spidey videos out there, and it's a lot of high profile stuff, because I mean, I don't think he's going to interest people with analysis of other people that you don't know. I mean, but it's going to be stuff like maybe murders, serial killers, trial stuff. It's really, really fascinating. It's really interesting, and she likes to watch stuff like that. But let us know what you think. I do think it's actually fascinating to sit and watch some of this stuff and break it down, and then think, like she says, it seems like it would be common sense when he starts to say, when you cover in your mouth, you're really, trying to keep yourself from saying something, or maybe it's deception or whatever. Fascinating. Love this stuff. But anyway, let us know what you think. Don't forget to do all the fun, the needed YouTube stuff, okay? Subscribe, even hit the little bell where you'll know when we come out with our new videos. And try not to forget the thumbs up, and leave comments and let us know what you think. Let us know something we can react to, and we'll see you on the other side in our next video. Peace, everybody.